Imagine the smallest thing that you can think of. Then think even smaller. Then think even smaller. Today we're going to be playing Spore, the evolution simulator, as the smallest of species. The Tinypotamus, the teensiest, tiniest creature to ever walk the earth. If you've never played it before, Spore is a game about creating and evolving a species from its humble microscopic origins as a single cellular organism, all the way up through its evolutionary journey to the creature stage and tribal and civilization stages, and then all the way up into the space stage to explore the cosmos and contend with a whole galaxy of other alien species. Normally, I'd play this game as a large and violent animal, but today, for a change of pace, I've decided to embark upon the journey of the smallest of species, and use my small size to my advantage to reproduce and evolve. So, as always, we embark once again, beginning our journey in the creature stage. The creature stage. The Tinypotamus begins its evolutionary journey on planet Microchondria, the tiniest powerhouse of the galaxy. To begin with, we're just not small enough yet, so it's off to eating a few vegetables, then on to locating a mate and reproduction to make ourselves as small as possible. Just really small. Now, being smaller at first might not seem like such an advantage in a primordial soup filled with large, hungry, imposing, and aggressive predators, but as it turns out, the single-cellular Tinypotamus is able to use its size to dodge past enemies, surviving and even thriving just by running away. And so, very early on, the Tinypotamus developed a slender body, small eyes, a small mouth, and the smallest of flagella, aiding in its escapes to wiggle away from large, hungry predators. Therefore, escape was the evolutionary niche of the early Tinypotamus, as its successful ancestors evolved more and more numerous wiggling flagella sticking out of their butts to make their escape, all directed toward pinpointing and securing vegetables for sustenance, evolving yet even more and more flagella sticking out of their butts. So commenced the first stages of the Tinypotamus's early evolutionary history. As it proliferated and advanced, the most successful among the Tinypotamus species evolved butts that were able to shoot air out the back, propelling our earliest ancestors to delightful dinners of lettuce, far away and safe from the clutches of hungry predators. And despite its size, the Tinypotamus eventually developed a brain big enough to catapult the Tinypotamus into its second stage of evolution, the creature stage. The creature stage. 1,500,000,000 years into the history of the Tinypotamus, our green friend rises to the surface and ventures its first steps onto the sands of planet Microchondria. But that is to say, not before our body gets even shorter, our eyes even tinier, and our mouths as small as one can please. This is truly as small as it is possible to be. A far cry from its cell stage adaptations, being so small rendered the early land-faring variations of the Tinypotamus sluggish and snail-like, inching along the ground at only the slowest of speeds. And so, deprived of its cell stage strengths of being faster than everyone, this forced the Tinypotamus to develop its social skills on land and find a new evolutionary niche. So, our first encounter with the species Chukongi, a species whose name sounds admittedly dirty, begins with the opening of our tiny mouths to raise the beautiful sound of our singing voices, purified by hundreds of millions of years of eating lettuce. It all ends with the obtainment of an alliance, our first friend. Not that we had so many options. That is to say, we are as weak as can be. Literally just a slug with a deformedly shortened body. So if we don't have friends, we will surely be eaten anyway. After befriending the Chukongi, it's time for the Tinypotamus to get even tinier with the shrinking of our eyeballs and the ensmallification of our mouths. After that, it's on to befriending the swoo and the goob, resulting in the enlargification of our brains. If the cell stage Tinypotamus was all about escaping from predators with speed, then the creature stage Tinypotamus's niche was making friends with other people to defend itself because, well, it was just so tiny. So remarkably tiny. After migrating to a new nest, new evolutionary features proliferate among the Tinypotamus. Tiny legs that make the Tinypotamus look admittedly brolic. a single arm with a tiny hand pointing out from the front of its legs, and the weensiest of beaks to make glad little noises and befriend other species. We use our cute new features to impress the Mitosi, the Dweebeeble, and the Atarchus. But then we faceplant and fail horribly to make friends with the Tiki Moonsters, who, despite their festive garb and gregarious outward appearance, are surprisingly hostile. It's time to run away and return to the nest to evolve different features to impress the otherwise unimpressible, hostile, red-faced Tiki Moonsters, and others who would seek otherwise to destroy us and our kind. Our arm moves from between our legs to a position raised wide above our heads in an X shape, signaling a dualistic ritual of approach. Is it that we're putting our arms up in the air to scare you like Hooga Booga? Or are we showing, by raising our arms, that we are unarmed and not a threat? No one really knows. We evolved into a literal X-Wing for a little while, grew a bill, and sprouted a tiny alfalfa to display our avant-garde fashionableness to other species. After numerous nest migrations, the Tinypotamus began to venture out into packs and make more friends, all starting with a species known only as ape, who happen to be much larger than us. Still even larger, continuing on to the rogue trilly, which looks like a big banana with spikes sticking out of its butt. Using our siren song, and I can hardly believe this, we managed to befriend this huge guy. From there, it's on to replace our mouths with something goofier, but still tiny. Our hands with handier hands, which are still tiny. And our feet with other feet that were still pretty small. For the next adaptation, it's time to fill our underarms with an impressive array of armpit hair. This will help demonstrate and express our style when fraternizing with new potential allies. And then, to get even smaller, something most unexpected happened to the Tinypotamus. It went from having 2 legs to only 1 leg so that it could be even smaller. This in turn changed its overall body shape from the letter X to the letter Y, a letter which is objectively smaller. And so, hopping around on 1 foot now and proudly displaying its armpit hair for lookers-on to behold and admire, the Tinypotamus, guarded by its strong ape ally, ventures into an encounter with a fearsome predator, the Alpha Broggle. Normally, this would spell a swift death, but today, the Tinypotamus uses its siren song to soothe the hostile, red-faced anger of the Broggle, not only to placate it, but also to make it our new friend. Wow. We are so cute and small that everyone wants to defend us, even if that means killing other people that are just slightly a threat while we're trying to befriend them. Next, we ally with the Frobbit, increase the amount of hair inside of our armpits, and evolve a singular small wing on our back for flapping around with. Surprise! We're coming from out of the sky to befriend you. This continues with more use of the siren song to befriend the hostile species, Wee Greevil, who are so evil that they have the word evil in their name, the Rudifus, and at last our anticipated reunion with the Tiki Moonster. This time, not to run away screaming, but win it over with all the new friends we've made. Success! Then it's on to the Mamonkey, the Aver, and the Lahunku, all culminating in the evolution of better mouths, hands, and feet on our little bodies. With all that, we've become the most popular, gregarious species to grace the surface of planet Microchondria, even getting to the point where, when we tried to befriend a hostile Sharkosaurus and soothe it from attack with our siren song, our allies love us too much to watch it attack us and kill it before we can even befriend it. That is to say, maybe if your friends aren't willing to destroy someone at the slightest sign of danger, maybe they're not your real friends after all. And so, 2,280,000,000 years into our evolutionary history, the Tinypotamus has finally evolved the intelligence required to pick up tools and enter with it the tribal stage. The tribal stage. The Tinypotamus enters packs, dons clothing in the form of bowler hats and mustaches, and enslaves its former friends. No longer equals, but pets living behind the tribal gatherer hut. Naturally, we rely on the baby hatchling duplication glitch to poop out a whole tribe very quickly. But then suddenly, the emergence of the brown tribe signals a new set of options. We either go to war or cultivate friendship. After quick deliberation, the choice is actually quite obvious. The smallest of strategies to employ would be giving up our food to the neighboring tribe to make ourselves even smaller. We shower the brown tribe with lavish cornucopias of food, but unfortunately, we actually don't, because we got into a fight with a giant demon. Oh well, just ignore that for now, but by now, 3 other tribes have spawned, Pink, Lavender, and Cyan, and they all hate us, because that's just what they do. Now it's on to a lot of multitasking, sending the Pink tribe presents, then unleashing the soothing, shaking percussions of our maracas upon them to get them all the way up to happy Blueface, guaranteeing that they will never, ever pick a fight with us unprovoked again. Okay, next. Now with all the remaining tribes still trying to kill us and burn down our homes, it's time to bring them gifts. Yes, gifts. To the Lavender Village, even as they are attempting to attack us and destroy our way of life. Success again! And now we are on a roll. They are indifferent to us once again at neutral Yellowface until we hit them with the harmonious sounds not only of our maracas, but also of our didgeridoos. Yet another alliance for the Tinypotamus. Next, it's time to hit the Cyan tribe with our songs to soothe them as well. And before you know it, we've triggered the late tribal stage crisis, with the Yellow tribe spawning in at already angry red face. But we, the Tinypotami, are so unmoved by their anger that after we complete the Mexican hat dance at our base, we bring them gifts and poop out fireworks right in front of their chieftain, instantly winning them over as our acquaintance, leaving only one last round of song from our maracas, didgeridoos, and of course our newly invented wooden horns. Now at last, the tribes united and the world won over to the friendly way of the Tinypotamus we've cultivated throughout the creature stage, and up until the tribal stage. It's time to move on up to the next phase, the civilization stage. An age of enlightenment. The Tinypotamus tribes unite to form a civic enterprise, and it all begins with the design and construction of our central town small, the smallest of town halls. Designed in an architectural style to mimic the bodily shape of the Tinypotamus with its arms raised in midair. Celebration and gladness is had in the streets. Our vehicles are minuscule. The Nissan Minima, which is, of course, the opposite of a Nissan Maxima. We live in tiny homes with tiny windows and tiny doors. And of course, the streets and corners of Tinypotamus City are dotted by microfilmeries for entertainment, and mitochondria where the Tinypotami go to work every day. All of these buildings are, of course, as small as can be. But now it's time to begin expanding, while staying small. We share our central continent with the purple, red, and orange city-states, but our itsy-bitsy vehicles are too fast to be stopped, and we claim each and every Spice Geyser on the continent. No contest. Whenever anyone got even a teeny bit mad at us, we just complimented them and their nation and sent them money until they liked us again. Thus, our strategy, by draining our bank accounts, accomplished the being of small. As the world's smallest economy, we had mastered the art of putting microeconomics to war. So naturally, it came as a surprise to everyone when we went to war to conquer the Red Nation through our religious crusade. But they weren't even mad at us because we just kept paying them money to make them still like us as we bombed their city with our brainwashing radio waves. Then we used a hypnotism flying saucer to beam the doctrines of Tinypotamusm into their brains. The smallest of strategies. Never go to war, but just keep paying and brainwashing people so that they never retaliate. Using this strategy, dubbed the Itsy Bitsy Blitzkrieg, we made our enemies totally happy with us, as we captured and appropriated all of their cities. No one ever really got a chance to dislike us because we just gave them all of our money while we destroyed them and their way of life. With the fall of the Red Nation, the central continent is finally won. And now it's time to design our ships for naval warfare. The Tinytanic, as well as, of course, our combat aircraft, the Tinycopter, shaped in the formation of the letter Y, like the body of the Tinypotamus. And it's complete with propellers on the side to represent our voluptuous armpit hair. And with all that, it's on to the Green Nation, the Blue Nation, and of course the Red Nation, all leading up to the endgame with the unleashment of fanatical uprising, our ultimate ability. which is basically an ideological nuclear missile to assimilate other people's cultures. At last, our mission is complete. We've conquered an entire planet in the tiniest way possible. No blood was shed. No one was even hurt. And we paid and bribed our way out of every single war, every conflict. No one saw it coming before it was too late. And ironically, that's the story of how the smallest species won the biggest of victories through sleuth, deception, and of course, let's never forget, most probable violations of the Geneva Convention. I'm just gonna skip the space stage because I hate it, and there's not really anything else tiny to do. That's it for now. I hope you enjoyed. And if you want to see any more, I've got the full run of this posted on my VOD channel, so there'll be a link below if you want to check that out. But until then, as always, I'm Ambiguous Amphibian. A big thanks to my patrons, who are smaller even than the smallest Tinypotamus. Until next time.